the universe stopped being seen, the natural universe, as having a purpose or an end. And that was my second correction watching the tape last night. I played too fast and too loose when I defined what a final cause was. I gave you what I wanted you to know, but really what it is a purpose or an end, a thing's raison d'être, its reason for being. And I don't speak French, you can guess. The Italian and the Spanish only go so far. But its end or its purpose, its reason for being. These are what a final cause really is. So when I said, I remember I was standing right about there when I said it, a thing's telos is, what's a book's telos or a hammer's telos? Well, God. What's a man's telos? God. Ultimately, this isn't particularly important, but you need to know. Really, the telos of a hammer, when I was thinking about it, is what is its purpose, since it's a created thing? And that hammer, it's hammering nails for a hammer. So that's an artifact made by man. But man's purpose is God. And ultimately, hammers orient man towards some good he wants to nail because he wants to make a house. And so it's a whole bunch of teloses, final causes put together, which ends up being oriented towards God. That's what man is doing when he's acting properly. So, that being as it is, you don't have intelligibility, meaningfulness in your endeavors as a created being or as a scientist, if you're one who studies nature in some capacity, if the universe doesn't have a purpose, right? I mean, people nowadays miss this. The postmodernists who will fall under my crosshairs for attack today, that's basically what the second half of what I'm talking about is an onslaught on postmodernism. And a much more friendly attack on modernism. Whereas people in the church tend to talk about the 21st century as modern, that guy's a modern, he's a modernist. What they really mean is he's a postmodernist. So what I'm giving you today is a way to distinguish everything that went before the Enlightenment as being medieval and pre from modernism, and then a way to distinguish modernism from postmodernism. So that's really what I'm doing today. And I'm much friendlier to modernism than to postmodernism. Both were erroneous in some regard. I already told you why I think there's a problem with modernism. Because the science and the philosophy switched over to a purposive, a non-ordered view of the universe. And of course, if you do the science improved, ironically. So modernity is marked by a number of paradoxes. The main paradox being, if all of Protestantism and all of Enlightenment thought is a response to Catholic teleology, seeing the universe as one big ordered system, then why do science or philosophy at all, right, if it's meaningless? That's a giant paradox, and we're going to talk about some of the other ones. So, the Enlightenment and the Protestant Reformation, which happened at about the same time and in many ways are equal, but in many heuristic ways are opposite to each other, right? Seculars and Protestant Christians. We see it in these to our day. That's really Enlightenment humanism versus Reformation theology. They all were reacting to Catholic teleology, which is reacting to an ordered, meaningful view of the universe. I can't say it enough. Okay, are there any questions there? Yeah.
I want to make sure you're not saying something I don't think you're saying. So when you look at, if you wanted to just take an example of medicine, syphilis was a big problem during these days. If you wanted to just cure syphilis, you don't really need to know the final cause to get to the root of what's causing the problem. So is that what you're talking about, a contradiction? I mean, when Bacon's talking about you don't need to know the final cause of everything to create astronomy and science and math and whatever, there's some advantage to that. I mean, there's a huge advantage being a philosopher and looking at the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, if you specialize, if you know, and don't necessarily have to see the big picture of the final cause, that did help, right? And that talks about the contradiction.
Agreed. One of the marks of enlightenment is specialization, right?
Right.
You're not just like an educated person who studies philosophy, theology, math, and then some inchoate science. But true, remember I said we want that, we want the specialization. But even within the specialized fields, you do better science when you have a view of the whole. You know, if you're asking, okay, what is the purpose or end of this? I mean, think about the creationism evolution debate. It's so strange because it's like, well, yeah, I mean, most Catholics feel comfortable articulating the universe is created, but we also feel comfortable articulating, and once it was created, evolution is in effect. It was effectuated, and I mean, you know, maybe not everyone, but the Catholic Church has no problem with that theory. And all I'm suggesting is, once you specialize and you have specialized sciences, each science functions better with the view of, okay, what's driving, in a purposive, final sense, this evolution, this process. The same thing with all the sciences. You're studying processes, and you're always going to do it better in a non-positivistic sense. Remember, positivistic means you just strip the system, whatever system you're studying, down to its efficient causes. You're always going to do it better if you study the efficient causes with a view to purpose. So I'm with you. Specialization, a mark of modernity, was good. I have a lot that's positive to say about modernity. It gave us our best political science. We still haven't there is a new political science in postmodernity, you know, Marxism, and that didn't overcome, you know, the genius thought of, you know, the Whigs in England and then the American colonials who furthered on the Whig theory in England, which I'll talk a little bit about tonight. So no, modernism is good in a lot of ways. One of them was the specialization of the sciences. Good question. I'm glad to clarify that, because I said it last week, but you can't say it often enough. Any other questions? Okay, so just anytime you see teleology, again, I'm comfortable being a little bit hoary about the fact that teleology basically means, since it means the purpose of the universe, it means the universe is intelligible. This basically conduces to what I have here is NT, natural theology. You just do theology, remember this thing here, by looking at nature. And you could do a cosmology by looking at nature too. You're doing the natural cosmology on this side, you're doing the natural theology on that side. Nothing tricky there. But what I'm going to talk about today is, there was another one of the great paradoxes of modernity, is that it tried to take from natural theology this concept of the natural law without having any of the natural theology in that. That's an impossibility. So natural law is basically the name for this intelligibility. It's except in an ethical sphere, right? You look around at nature, you look around at creatures, and you look at the order of things, you look at their telos, and you more or less say, there's a natural, divinely created ethical code that we basically already know. You know, once we come of age, maybe not when we're born, but by the time we've come of age, you basically can discern in nature, you know, it's wrong to murder. And there's much in the Old Testament that gives us a basis for saying that the Jews believed in the natural law too, you know. The Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, was not like brain-numbingly new. They were like, yeah, this is right, and it's divine, and now it's sort of Jewish positive law. But we knew it ahead of time. It's not nice to kill people, right? But so this move in the Enlightenment was, again, I want you to, anytime you hear natural theology and or natural law, you just ought to be thinking Catholicism, something that's really unique to us. Now, there are other traditions that have embraced natural law. I'm about to get to them. But I'm going to show you that really only the Catholic tradition in a certain sense, the tragic Greek tradition before it, but I'm not going to get into that. Really, only the Catholic tradition, and maybe the Jewish tradition, can embrace natural law. And I'm going to tell you why today. I'm basically I'm telling you everyone I'm including. I'll tell you the easier. The one I'm excluding is it's impossible to have such a thing, so-called, as Protestant natural law. And I'll tell you why. In one sentence, because if you reject teleology, if you reject natural theology, you can't discern an ethical code in nature. Because for the Protestants, all things, including moral tablature, comes from the Bible. Sola Scriptura, right. And Melvert missed the first couple lectures. He still knows those hoary Latin words. So, very good. So, you see how it's all linking up? To have a Protestant natural law, which is part of the genius on which the founding principles of this country premised themselves, is a contradiction in terms. And I'm going to tell you how. So, natural law, I want you to think about, remember last week I introduced the concept of intelligibility after going through, I think, a week without saying it, first week. The major change from medieval times, Middle Ages to modernity was a step backwards insofar as, we got these inexplicable changes for the better. We got a stepping back, retrogression in terms of, what we ought to see accompanying those changes for the better. I.e., we went from seeing the universe as something that's ordered and purposive and intelligible and studyable by the sciences to something that's a ball of Heil, meaningless matter, prime matter, that doesn't have a purpose and it's just floating in space and time. And all of a sudden we got better science. It's weird. That should stick out to you, and hopefully, again, if you take 4 things from these 3 lectures, hopefully that will be one of them. That's a really weird thing that happened, a genuinely weird thing that happened, a paradox going into the Enlightenment. So we'll see how it played out. So natural laws, today's important new word for intelligibility. They're both. Intelligibility is the Aristotelian term, natural law is more like a Thomist term, though either one would have made sense of either one. They can be fungible for our purposes. So what stems from natural theology is natural law, the way I explained a little bit, from the fact that we can do a theology of nature, comes from this theological, ethical system that we see in nature.